This isn't gossip anymore. This is the moment Prince Harry's entire royal narrative starts cracking in public, and Tom Bower just lit the match.
I don't see how the Queen, who was described by Harry as vicious in his book, by Harry in the Apple interviews, can forgive him. I mean, he'd have to eat so much humble.
Royal biographer Tom Bower has dropped what many insiders are quietly calling the most dangerous allegation the monarchy has faced in decades, and the fallout is brutal. Prince Harry is spiraling, Meghan Markle has reportedly gone into full legal lockdown, and suddenly the conversation isn't about Netflix deals, victimhood, or palace feuds anymore. It's about the children, about Archie, about Lilibet, and about a truth that may have been buried under layers of secrecy, branding, and carefully staged optics. For years, the Sussex narrative was simple: privacy, protection, safety. But now people are asking a question that refuses to die. Why are these children so hidden, so undocumented, so strangely absent from royal life? And once that question is asked, it doesn't stop echoing. Tom Bower isn't some YouTube conspiracy theorist chasing clicks. He's an investigative biographer known for pulling apart powerful figures who desperately want their secrets kept sealed. He doesn't speculate casually, he digs, he cross-checks, and he publishes only when he believes something doesn't add up. And according to him, nothing about the Sussex children adds up. Bower has openly said he chooses people who work hardest to control their narrative, because those are usually the people hiding the most. And when he turned his attention to Meghan Markle, he ran into a wall so aggressive it raised alarms immediately. Friends wouldn't talk, emails went unanswered, sources vanished, a silence so absolute it screamed strategy. And then came the claim that detonated everything. According to Bower, the official story surrounding Archie's birth was fabricated, not exaggerated, not misunderstood, fabricated. Think about the implications of that word. The public was told Meghan would give birth at the Portland hospital. She didn't. We were told labor had begun. Hours later, the baby had already been born. Dates shifted, times changed. The traditional hospital steps photo never happened. No clear medical confirmation followed. Instead, there was fog, and fog inside the monarchy is never accidental. Every modern royal birth before this followed protocol. Transparency, timelines, doctors named, photos released within hours. But with Archie, silence, confusion, and statements that contradicted each other. And when people asked why, they were labeled cruel, invasive, racist, or obsessed. But Tom Bower didn't back off, because in royal history, lies around birth aren't small lies. They strike at succession, legitimacy, and constitutional law. That's when a word long whispered in royal circles went fully mainstream: surrogacy. Now, here's where everything escalates beyond gossip. Surrogacy itself isn't scandalous. Thousands of families are built that way. But within the British monarchy, it's not just personal, it's legal. For a child to be in the line of succession, the rules are brutally clear. They must be born of the body of a royal descendant. If that rule is broken, titles don't just become questionable, they become invalid. Which means this isn't about privacy anymore. It's about whether the monarchy accidentally handed royal status to children who may not constitutionally qualify. And that's a nightmare scenario the palace cannot afford. Then there are the pregnancy images, the moments that people brushed off as social media nitpicking until patterns started forming. Bumps changing size, bumps appearing to fold, bumps sitting differently from one appearance to the next. Moments where Meghan crouched in high heels in late pregnancy in ways obstetric professionals openly questioned. Individually, these moments could be dismissed. Together, they formed a visual trail that never fully disappeared. Then came the birth announcement chaos. Conflicting statements, unclear locations, missing medical confirmations. Compare that to Catherine's birth's minute-by-minute transparency. With Meghan, nothing but narrative control. And then Lilibet. If Archie raised eyebrows, Lilibet set off alarms. Born in California. No hospital named, no doctors identified. No public documentation initially released. No traditional acknowledgement from the palace beyond carefully worded statements. And perhaps most telling of all, no photographed bond with the royal family. No images with King Charles, no moments with Queen Camilla, no No appearances with William or Catherine, not even a single photograph of Queen Elizabeth II holding either child. Pause on that. Queen Elizabeth met countless children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Yet there is not one verified image of her with Archie or Lilibet. In a family obsessed with documentation, the absence is thunderous. And while the Sussexes insist this is about protection, the palace's silence feels less like distance and more like caution. Insiders have quietly suggested that the royal family was advised to maintain separation, not out of cruelty, but out of institutional self-defense. Because if these allegations ever become legally tested, any public endorsement could explode in their hands. Meanwhile, reports out of Montecito paint a grim picture of Prince Harry. He's allegedly glued to screens, reading comments, watching videos, tracking rumors, spiraling into paranoia, snapping at staff, barely sleeping. A man who built his post-royal identity around fatherhood, now watching that identity questioned globally. And here's the cruel irony. The more Harry rages at the media, the more people notice that this crisis wasn't created by reporters. It was created by secrecy. Because transparency would have ended this years ago. One document, one clear explanation, one medical confirmation. Instead, the response has been lawyers, cease and desist letters, threats, intimidation, and that's where Meghan's role becomes impossible to ignore. While Harry appears emotionally unraveling, Meghan's approach is surgical, strategic, controlled, legal pressure instead of evidence, silence instead of clarity. But legal force doesn't erase doubt, it multiplies it. Because when someone refuses to answer the simplest question, were these children born the way you claimed, suspicion metastasizes. And the stakes are enormous. This isn't just about branding or public image, this is about royal legitimacy, constitutional stability, and two children growing up under a cloud that never needed to exist. And we haven't even reached the most explosive part yet. Because next comes money, motivation, and the one question that terrifies the palace more than any scandal before it. The moment the word Dina entered this conversation, everything changed. Because Dina doesn't argue, it doesn't spin narratives, it doesn't hide behind lawyers or branding, it answers one question, permanently. And that's why this single issue has become the most dangerous pressure point in Prince Harry's life. Supporters keep insisting this is all cruel speculation, that questioning parentage crosses a moral line. And under normal circumstances, they'd be right. But these are not normal circumstances. These are children holding royal titles, sitting in the line of succession, tied directly to constitutional law. That changes everything. All it would take is one test, one confirmation, one transparent act to shut this down forever. But instead of clarity, there's resistance. Instead of evidence, there's outrage. Instead of openness, there's silence. And in the court of public opinion, silence doesn't read as dignity, it reads as fear. The palace knows this. That's why its response hasn't been emotional, it's been surgical, no photos, no warmth, no visible relationship. The royal family hasn't attacked the Sussexes publicly, but they haven't embraced the children either. And that quiet distance is louder than any statement. Because the monarchy does nothing without calculation. Behind closed doors, constitutional experts are reportedly gaming out scenarios no one wants to discuss publicly, title reviews, succession adjustments, legal contingencies, not because they want scandal, but because institutions survive by preparing for the worst. And this would be catastrophic. A legitimacy crisis inside the royal line would shake the monarchy at its foundation. Bloodline is not symbolism here, it's the spine of the institution. If uncertainty creeps into that, public confidence erodes fast. Which brings us back to Harry, trapped in a nightmare of his own making. Fatherhood became his redemption story, his escape from trauma, his proof that leaving royal life was worth it. Every interview, every documentary, every speech reinforced that narrative. I am healed because I am a father. Now imagine what it does to a man when the world starts questioning that identity. Not questioning whether he loves his children, but questioning whether the story he told about them is true. If Harry is telling the truth, this situation is unbearable. A violation, a humiliation, a global interrogation of something deeply personal. But if even part of the allegations are accurate, then Harry is stuck in an impossible position. He can't admit the truth without detonating everything, but he can't convincingly deny it without proof. That's why he looks cornered. And history shows Harry does not cope well when cornered. Tom Bower's assessment of Harry is brutal but consistent, emotionally fragile, deeply damaged by Diana's death, prone to blaming external forces rather than confronting uncomfortable realities. When criticism comes, Harry doesn't reflect, he reacts. And now, criticism isn't coming from tabloids alone. It's coming from legal experts, royal historians, and constitutional commentators asking questions that won't go away. Meanwhile, Meghan's strategy remains unchanged: control the narrative, suppress dissent, weaponize victimhood when necessary, and monetize when possible. This is where the money motive becomes impossible to ignore. Harry and Meghan's post-royal life is expensive, staggering security costs, private jets, staff, a Montecito mansion, designer everything. Royal funding disappeared the moment they left. What remained was one asset: their royal story. Netflix, Spotify, book deals, speaking engagements. Every dollar is tied to their relevance as royals who escaped. And children who are unquestionably royal multiply that value. They're not just kids, they're brand pillars. That doesn't mean the children aren't loved, but it does mean their status matters financially, immensely. Tom Bower has openly suggested Meghan believed Harry was far wealthier than he actually was. That realization may explain the relentless push to secure long-term income through media deals. And nothing secures that better than royal lineage. Which brings us back to the hypocrisy that infuriates critics the most. Harry and Meghan sold themselves as champions of truth, of radical honesty, of tearing down the palace's obsession with image. They accuse the royal family of secrecy, manipulation, and deception. And yet, when asked to clarify the most basic facts about their children, facts that could end all speculation, they retreat behind silence. They spoke openly to Oprah about alleged racism, they shared intimate mental health struggles, they exposed private family conversations. But birth records? Off limits. Medical clarity? Forbidden. Simple proof? Unthinkable. That contradiction is what fuels this fire. You cannot build a global brand on your truth and then refuse to answer legitimate questions about the foundation of that truth. And while the adults play strategy games, two children remain at the center: Archie and Lilibet. No matter how this story ends, they are the ones who will live with it longest. If everything is exactly as Harry and Meghan claim, then this secrecy has done irreversible damage. Their children will grow up under a permanent cloud of suspicion that never needed to exist. If surrogacy or assisted reproduction was involved, that could have been shared honestly, as a story of modern family building, not shame. Instead, the silence has turned a personal medical matter into a constitutional mystery. That's not protection, that's exposure. And the longer this drags on, the worse it gets. Every blurred photo, every legal threat, every refusal to clarify, it all compounds. Because in public perception, transparency equals innocence and avoidance equals guilt. The palace understands this dynamic better than anyone. That's why it's keeping distance, why it's preparing quietly, why it refuses to publicly anchor itself to a narrative that may collapse later. This isn't cruelty, it's institutional survival. Tom Bower's credibility only amplifies the pressure. His track record shows he doesn't publish recklessly. He waits. He corroborates. And when he says the Portland hospital story was fabricated, people listen not because they want scandal, but because history tells them he's often right. That doesn't mean every allegation is true, but it means none can be dismissed. And so we arrive at the crossroads. Harry and Meghan have two options left. They can continue this path: silence, lawyers, curated images, and endless speculation, guaranteeing this question follows their children forever. Or they can do the one thing that would end it instantly. Prove it. Not through interviews, not through documentaries, not through lawsuits, through facts. Until then, the question won't disappear. Because this isn't just gossip anymore, it's about legitimacy. It's about truth. And it's about whether the couple who promised radical honesty are willing to live by it when it costs them everything. And the longer they wait, the louder the silence becomes. The silence becomes. The silence becomes. The silence becomes.